Nice hoodie, Jordan. Let's rock. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com Deeper Dive. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on Twitter, joined by Terry McBride at DigitalB21. I get that right?
You did.
Yeah,
well done,
I always thought it would be T McB. If that's around, you should really grab T McB. I'm assuming it isn't.
I think I actually do have it from just some point where I registered it, never thinking that I need like an actual significant social media presence. But I have a weird habit of just grabbing things when I think of them. That was one that obviously fit with my name, but I've never used it. Digital B21 is from an old Bad Religion song that just has kind of been one of my go-to handles since back in like the AOL Instant Messenger days.
All right. Well, hey, happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It's weird being here on a Sunday, Terry. I haven't done a Sunday night basketball show in years, usually handling NFL on these days, but it's a really fun slate. 9 games. We just got the Hayward news a little while ago, and I think that's where we kick it off with. We can just dive right into this here because we're going to have a lot to digest and break down from this single game alone. On FanDuel, the 3 of the 4 highest owned players are all from the Hornets. 4 of the top 5 highest projected owned players are all from this game. You can check that out if you have the Awesemo projections at awesemo.com. We'll start with San Antonio, though. No LaMarcus Aldridge. He's remained out for some time now. And DeMar DeRozan, while he's not having the greatest season, and as Josh mentioned today, the range of outcomes for him is really, really small. He is still someone that's averaging 1.3 DraftKings points per minute, 27.5% usage, and a 36% assist rate in over 400 minutes without Aldridge this season. Pretty solid numbers.
Yeah, for sure. And the assist rate is something that jumped out to me. I spent most of my day writing the deep dive, which people can check out on the site if you want to read ahead.
Totally free, by the way. Completely free. Check that out. It's awesome. Best comprehensive NBA article you're going to find.
100% for sure. And better when everybody else writes it, but I try and keep up over on Sundays when I get a chance. So what jumped out to me was DeRozan over the last 5 games had a 42% assist rate. So, I mean, he is just distributing the ball, racking up some additional fantasy points beyond his usual expected production. 24.9% usage clip, 23.2 real life points per game in 33.5 minutes since Aldridge has been on the shelf. He's, the way I described him, as a known and frustrating commodity in DFS, but it makes a ton of sense to roster him. He was one of the leading choices tonight. Really stands out on FanDuel, $7,600 at the shooting guard spot. Slips a little bit in Alex's rankings for flipping over to DraftKings, but I think he's very much in play on both sites.
Yeah, and the Charlotte Hornets, meanwhile, all right, bottom 10 defense over the last month. You lose Hayward, you're not expected to have P.J. Washington. We'll get into all that in a minute, but this should not be that tough of a spot. Now, Charlotte play middle of the road pace, which is to be expected with this team. I do think, though, if we're looking at the rest of San Antonio, pulling up ownership just on this team right now, you've got DeMar DeRozan on FanDuel, a lot higher owned at a better price than on DraftKings. Still getting a little bit of love, 14% on a 9-game slate, significant enough. Yep. But Derek White and Rudy Gay are both projected to get a little bit of love over here on DraftKings at 5,100 and 4,700 respectively. Can you get to either of them today at their price points?
I don't know that they're going to be coming up significantly for me. I haven't run my own projections yet. I'll be doing that in a hurry after the show and leaning a lot on Alex's. So just taking a look at, how they're coming up in, let's say, the optimal lineup appearance rate. They're both getting significantly over-owned based on what we're seeing. They're both in the value range salary-wise, 4,900, 4,700 respectively on FanDuel, 4,751 Gay then White in both of those. But neither one comes up in nearly 10% of the optimal lineups in our simulations. Both are getting way over-owned on that mark, both coming up significantly negative leverage. I just think they're better value guys to go to at those positions, and I don't think we really need them tonight. They're okay in terms of, could those guys pay off those salaries? Sure. But with that much of the field on such a large slate going to them when we don't need them as value plays, they're not nearly mandatory. I don't need to get to them.
Yeah, I don't think you need to either. And Rudy Gay, does he have a few decent performances throughout the season? Sure. Does LaMarcus Aldridge being out help him? Sure, it does. but we have a pretty good idea of his allotment of minutes from Greg Popovich, Terry. And it's hopefully he gets to 25, maybe 26, usually going to be between 22 and 24 minutes. He is a right around 1 fantasy point per minute guy on the season, which is nice. But like, you're rostering Rudy Gay at a near 5K price point, and you're desperately hoping he gets you to 30, 35 DraftKings points, which we just haven't seen very often.
Right. It's like buying a stock at a high point, or for a more relevant conversation, buying a Top Shot at a high point, right? Where we're getting a broken market and then we're just jumping in on a guy just because he's there and he looks like he might be a relevant value at that price. I really don't think there's much opportunity for him to, really perform for us and hit any kind of upside. So you're talking about, if you want to roster him, you're probably going to get that median projection out of him and not much more.
Any other thoughts on this team? Dejante Murray's price point has come up. It's kind of leveled out here in that high 7K or high 6K, low 7K range. He's 7K flat on DraftKings. With Aldridge off the floor this season, you've got Dejante Murray averaging 1.12 fantasy points per minute, which is strong, but he's also 1.11 with Aldridge on the floor. So you haven't seen a stark difference in production. He's played pretty well though, but on a 9-game slate, are you willing to pay that much for him?
I have him as kind of a mix-in type option, just kind of based on he comes up in just enough of the optimals. It's not a big number. It's below 10% on both sites, but just as kind of a guy to rotate into a small volume of my lineups across 150. I think he's a little bit in play just because he does have those peripheral upsides, nice steals average on the season, 2.6 steals per game. And he does produce over the last 5 games, 23.4% usage, despite, White coming back and the changes in the roster, 15.4 real life points, 23.4 rebounding rate, and a 26% assist rate. So he contributes in a few different categories and has that upside with, the added peripheral stats, but I don't love him by any means. He would be in, if I ran 150, he'd be in, 10 maybe. And that would get him to a better rate than what the field has him at, which is what I want to do if I'm going to him at all. So small, get over the field kind of a guy that should be done easily for me on FanDuel, where he's only 4-ish% owned. If I have him like 10%, I'm okay with that. On DK, comes down a little bit more toward kind of a flat play for me. Wouldn't really be pushing him on DraftKings despite a lower price.
The only thing I'll say to this before we talk about the Hornets is be careful at looking at his minutes and thinking there's some, I think there's some perceived volatility in his minutes because, in the past, there's been so much volatility in Murray's minutes. But almost every single game where he's playing, say, less than 32 minutes, Terry, they're all blowouts, right? Like that last game that he played, they only won by 11. They were up by 42 points going into the fourth quarter. 42 points a minute into the fourth quarter. That's absurd. So
yeah. That was such a wonky box score game for the box score hunters out there, with both teams playing just basically 10 scrubs in the entire fourth quarter. And then it was the Hawks, right?
Yeah.
That comeback. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Dude, they cut a lead down 30 points. 31 points in like 11 minutes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Sub replacement level guys against sub replacement level guys. But it's a hell of a quarter.
Nathan Knight was putting in work, man. The Charlotte side is where it gets really interesting. There's no Gordon Hayward. We're not projecting PJ Washington to play. And Caleb and Cody Martin are both out. So that might not seem like much, the latter names. But those are wing players that can soak up minutes in the event of a guy like Hayward being out. He leads the team in usage this season. He's played really well. PJ Washington's at least getting decent minutes when he's out there. I want to get to LaMelo and Devontae Graham and all of these guys, but I think we have to start with Bridges because the ownership on him is very high right now. And I think maybe you could say justifiably so, but you and I kind of shot the shit about this before the show. He's not a very good per minute guy. We need 35 plus minutes from Bridges tonight if we're going to roster him at a high clip.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to need that and possibly even more, just given how much the field. Yes, if he plays the whole game, he could deliver. Mm-hmm. Just given how much the field is going to him on such a big slate with so many options at the position, you get dual position out of him on DraftKings, which is good. But I like the power forward spot and some of the other spots on the board for at the position on FanDuel. So given how much the field is going to him, I just don't know that I want to be on him. I don't mind getting overweight on when I think a play looks really good and getting, well beyond the field, but on such a big slate with a guy who is not a reliable producer, 0.86 fantasy points per minute just in general on the season. And in this role, just see if I can get to it quick enough. Do you have that handy? His production
without Hayward?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to pull it up.
Yeah, so very marginal increase, 0.8 DraftKings points per minute without Hayward on the floor this season. You can take PJ Washington off as well, and it's another marginal increase or decrease. It's right in the same neighborhood. Usage goes from like 14 to 7 or 16 to 17, Terry. It's just not a big uptick in production or in overall volume.
Yeah. So given this change of situation that's going to, thrust him into prominence for people rostering him in NBA DFS, he is still a sub-average NBA player in terms of usage and productivity for fantasy points. I can go elsewhere. I really can. I don't think we need to get on him. He'll probably come up for me through process, but I think it makes sense to try and get underweight on him.
I think you're right. Like if I end up with some Miles Bridges, I'm not going to be particularly upset about it because I do think he's going to play a lot of minutes. Mm-hmm. But this isn't like a 3,500 player. You're paying $5,100 for him on DraftKings, $54 on FanDuel. Of course, it makes sense. You got to play 2 at power forward, but there's a decent amount at that position. So I think another thing to consider is they have enough bodies that can soak up usage. LaMelo Ball sees an increase in usage. As a matter of fact, with Hayward off the floor this season, he sees his usage jump to 27.5%. That's more than 2%. 35.5% assist rate, 10% rebound rate, and 1.34 fantasy points per minute. Really strong numbers. And then Graham sees his usage jump over 4% with Hayward off the floor. These guys can soak up these voided opportunities from Hayward. And I think you're going to see Miles Bridges continue to kind of pick up the scraps, which across 35 minutes, he's still going to be able to fall into some peripherals, fall into some points. But LaMelo Ball makes for a very interesting play, particularly on FanDuel where he's sub 8K.
Yeah, definitely. He's the leader for me, I think, on the board once I make these adjustments. I'll probably look to see if I can get beyond the field on him just through process and see where he comes up before I start dabbling and making any adjustments. I never like to really get involved and force things. I think, in my opinion, getting your opinion out of your DFS process is one of the most important things you can do. But boy, does this kid look good for the price. 7,800 on FanDuel, monster producer already, 1.23 in that changing role. He kind of just seized the minutes when he had the opportunity and hasn't given them back, and is still underpriced on the site. It's a $900 difference site to site. And I think he's still in play on DK, even at 87. Definitely comes down a peg. He's about half the optimal lineups that he is over on FanDuel, but definitely makes sense to try and get overweight. Meaty public ownership, around 36% owned in our most recent projection, but I think it makes sense to exceed that. And, if we're pushing him into like half of our lineups, it's risky on a big slate, but I think he's there. I think the numbers justify it between where he is on the median projection and where he's going to need to get to for a ceiling game at that price. I don't think we're asking too much of him. So, yeah, I think we can definitely muscle up on LaMelo here.
Me too. By the way, is there anything else than a back itch that you can't itch? That you can't reach?
Oh God. Oh, that's the worst.
Got it right now. I just almost dislocated my shoulder trying to get to it, man.
I didn't have you on screen. I wonder if Jordan had you out on YouTube so everybody could watch that.
No. I made sure I was off screen and then I started going to town. I was about to get up against like the corner of the wall and just start doing the back scratch shimmy. You know what I'm talking about?
Back rub on there.
Oh, got to. We'll wait till I get off screen again and I'll fix this up because it is annoying the shit out of me.
Yeah, you need like a good ruler or something around.
Yeah, exactly. I do. What about Dejante Graham and Terry Rozier? And by the way, guys, I know we're spending a lot of time on this game, but there are a number of games that we're going to spend virtually no time on. So you'll thank us for this later. Or maybe you won't. That's okay. What are your thoughts on the rest of this team?
Graham becomes interesting with the uptick in usage.
Washington ruled out, by the way, right now. He's confirmed.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, just opening up more and more opportunity for everybody else here. So, yeah, I think Graham with the uptick in usage becomes interesting. He's a guy I didn't love and don't particularly love. I tend to try and avoid getting to guys who are, primarily scoring-based guys. I think I had it in the column here. No, I didn't put I was looking for his percent of your scoring that's based on just pure scoring, his fantasy scoring. But he needs that shot to fall. But with the uptick in usage, with the potential to see a few additional minutes beyond what he's gotten recently in that 3-guard rotation, I definitely think he's in play. It looks like Alex's numbers definitely vaulted up when Hayward came off. 0.84 fantasy point per minute producer for the season. But in this role, I expect that he sinks a few extra shots. He can definitely produce for us. Only 5,200 on FanDuel. Another player, significant price discrepancy site to site, 6,100 on DK, and only eligible at the point guard spot on DK, where he's a shooting guard on FanDuel. Shooting guard on FanDuel, a little flatter, a little bit of a more flexible position where you can just work in some of these mid-range guys. So he'd be more in play, I think, in that rotation from that perspective. But he's going to be really popular on the site, which gives me a little hesitation on, really pushing him. 33% projected ownership, coming up in less than that of the optimals. So little over leveraged there. Looks better from a leverage perspective just on DK, but that's probably mostly driven by that price difference where he's just, more expensive, pushes him off the board a little bit for a lot of people.
Someone asked, last thing here on this team, someone asked about McDaniels. He really hasn't been getting any playing time. I think he'll soak up a little bit of run. I don't think it's going to be enough, though, Terry, to really like much of him today.
Yeah, I'm always willing to consider a dead min price guy, and he is that on both sites. Small forward and power forward eligible on DK. Power forward only obviously on FanDuel. I just don't know that he necessarily gets there for us. It looks like Alex projected him in this role for almost 17 minutes, and he just doesn't come up as relevant at all in Alex's numbers for FanDuel. A little bit relevant on DK, but I expect his ownership is going to shoot up between now and lock based on being min price and being somewhat in play, possibly perceived as more in play by the public. So I think that levels off any chance that we would get of having leverage for a sub 10% optimal guy. Not really for me. If you get him as a mix and match that makes things work at other positions, by all means, he's probably one of the better dead minimum price guys on the board on DK. I just don't know that we need it tonight. There are some pretty good values and movable parts.
Yeah, there sure are. And you might see some weird guard rotations where you've got 3 guards out there at the same time, with just an overall smaller lineup that, and then if Bridges plays 35 plus minutes, there might not be as many minutes as we thought. But it's a good question because PJ Washington and Hayward being out, they're voiding a lot of playing time. Anything else on this game, Terry?
Just kind of to that point, I could see both of these teams just kind of going small versus small and not really worrying about the size very much at all, just given these rosters and the overall makeup. A lot of small forward type guys and hybrid 2-3 type guys.
Yeah, the overall idea of just getting your best players out on the court. You know what I mean? Yep. Just get your best players out there and see what they can do instead of trying to match up perfectly against a team that only has a couple offensive threats to begin with. Let's talk about Minnesota and the Toronto Raptors. The Timberwolves, just an atrociously bad team. I guess I could have left bad out, right? They're just an atrocious team. +8 on the road, 230.5 total. No D'Angelo Russell, no Jarrett Culver. The one note I have here, Terry, and I'd love to get your take on this because Josh was very much against it. And I think his reasoning all made sense, especially given how many good options we have. But Karl-Anthony Towns is getting very little ownership, around 6%. If you go back to last year, since the start of last season, he's averaging 1.6 DraftKings points per minute and over 550 minutes without Russell. I took Wiggins off as well. Do you think there is any merit to saying, you know what, Cat coming in virtually unowned, played 30 plus minutes in both games, despite apparently having no lung function, could play 37, 38 minutes in a competitive game if it stays close today? Or is it just no point in trying to chase these points when we have a lot of other options?
I mean, just looking at the center spot, I always have the boom bust in front of me when we're doing these shows, and I just filtered everything down to centers only. Of course, I did it by FanDuel center, so we have a few additional guys when we talk on the DK slate, but there's one Stark option at the top, one value kind of option, and then you get to Nikola Jokic, who's 11.3% optimal at his big salary, and the board becomes relatively even until you get down to town. So I think he's in play. I just wish if we were taking that kind of a chance on a guy, when the words reduced lung function get involved, and I heard you guys talking about it this morning, it just starts to concern me a little bit. Even though we've seen him get out there and run and be fine, it's just, a couple games back, 9,500, I think is maybe a bit more than I would want to spend on that spot. If he was like 91 even, or just a few $100 cheaper, I think it would boost my confidence in saying yes to that, particularly when we're only getting one center on FanDuel, which would be my concern. There are other guys at the top of the board that I think work in just better in terms of their price and what they can do, what they allow you to get to in other spots. I don't know that it's the most efficient spend of our money. I'm more concerned about that than I am about Towns hitting value and coming in at least at his median projection and potentially having some upside to ceiling. If we knew he was getting 35, 36 minutes, then I'd have a little bit more confidence as well. So it's really just about the minutes and my lingering question about that.
Fair points. And honestly, I don't really see much at all in this Minnesota team that stands out as a quality option on either side, DraftKings or FanDuel.
No, not really. The other guy that I included a mention of, at least in the deep dive, was Beasley, who I think is, he's fine. He's kind of been fine, but not a player that I am getting to a ton of. I wouldn't expect, and he looks like he's actually come down slightly. He's just kind of a mix and match type guy. Anthony Edwards is a kid who intrigues me in general, but I think he's priced appropriately for what he's going to be. It looks like Alex's numbers agree with that. So yeah, it's kind of a few mix and match plays if you get them to, a limited volume with the Beasleys, the Rubios, and the Edwards of the world. I would take what shares I get, but I'm not looking to roster them or force them into my lineups by any means.
All right, talking the Toronto Raptors, 119.25 implied total today. It's one of the highest on the slate, Terry. Watanabe's out and OG Anunoby. That's some timely news we get here. Both of them sidelined for this one, which means you'll continue to see a bunch of Norman Powell minutes. And I'm not sure how much you do with that now that his price is pretty much topped out.
Yeah, it looks like the price is probably going to keep him off the board on both sites. 6,900, $6,900
Yep.
Norman Powell on DraftKings. That's absurd. Yeah,
playing well. It's just
absolutely. It's just the price point has definitely caught up. You take OG off the board, it looks like Alex will probably give him a handful of minutes. So if you're looking at the boom bust tool right now, or the projections right now before that news got in there, which is the version I have, then he'll come up a little bit, but I don't think he's going to gain enough relevance to pay off that price. And he'll probably pick up popularity, which I think is going to push him into negative leverage. We're not gaining ground on the field by rostering Norm Powell there at that price. So definitely don't want to go to that. I would be, if I'm picking anybody from this team, I would be focused on, the three main cogs in the machine, and then maybe Chris Boucher on the FanDuel side of things.
Yeah. Sorry. Someone mentioned that they don't know why we keep saying that Watanabe's out. Has he ever been in? Yeah, he was in like less than a week ago.
Yeah.
And
had a relevant game somewhere along the way.
Yep. And those backup minutes can affect other players, which is why we mention it. Is it big news? No, it's not big news, but it's news nonetheless. Aren't you glad we give you that instead of just ignoring all that? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll stop mentioning him. It's a fun name.
Don't mention these things, then you see it and you wonder, well, is that relevant? Why didn't these guys mention it?
Yeah,
we lose either way, but you lose only if we don't give you the news.
No question. I tell you, I understand why Lowry's getting the most ownership of any of these guys on DraftKings, because he's just a lot cheaper than everybody else, and they're so similar in their ability to produce fantasy points, right? Like when they're all on the floor together this season. Siakam's 1.13, Van Vliet's 1.05, Lowry's 1.02. Sure, Siakam has been the better of the three, but at the same time, it hasn't been markedly better. So Fred Van Vliet's taken a backseat role in their last two games, but he was on fire prior to that. It's tough to just predict which one of these players is going to do the bulk of the damage. And as far as usage, Siakam 25% when they're on the floor, Lowry 19, Van Vliet 20. So Siakam does have the edge, but you'll see Nurse stagger some minutes. It's tough because they all play so many. To me, the one advantage is who's the cheapest and where are the minutes coming. I love knowing that at least if you're rostering Toronto, you're getting 35 plus minutes from these guys almost every night. But the truth is you're going to need all of those minutes from them as well.
Yeah, that's their usual complement of minutes, right? So that's them playing and producing at the rates that you just gave, which are, separated by what, 1/10 of a point per minute across the three of them. So yeah, it's just a guessing game at which one of these guys is going to hit his relevant upside night for us. So I like to, kind of let the optimizer decide, as clunky as that kind of sounds. That's really what we want to do with these guys, I think. So it just filters through where the pricing falls. And then through my process, when we incorporate ownership and things like leverage, it squeezes out any of the over-owned guys. So really it becomes an exercise where this is, for me, just I'm not deciding between these guys. It's just process that will land me on the best value among the pricing and the ownership, which I agree. I think tonight looks like Lowry, probably from a price perspective, at least on both sites. And then I think there's an argument to be made just for the upside that Alex sees in terms of optimal lineup appearance rate for $8,500 Fred VanVleet at the shooting guard position. Like I mentioned before earlier, shooting guard on FanDuel tonight is just a little bit flat. So I think paying the $8,500 freight for him might make sense, and you're just hoping to capture that shot at an upside game. It doesn't look like enough of the field is getting to him at that probability for it doesn't look like enough of the field is getting to him for the probability of him hitting the upside, I should say. So I can get to some Fred VanVleet. I'm not wildly comfortable about it. Similar leverage on the other side, but a little bit less of an opportunity to get to that ceiling score that you need, and landing in fewer of the optimal lineups. So mainly a FanDuel play for me.
I would love to say that potential blowout could really benefit Chris Boucher, but it actually hurts him. Because when you're coming off the bench and you play an integral role on this team, he's actually losing minutes in these blowouts. The last two games, he was on pace for 28 and 29 minutes respectively, but Nurse pulled him along with the rest of the starters. He was on pace to close the game ahead of Aaron Baines for obvious reasons. So I think the price on Boucher is getting a little tough. I want to move it along here, but do you have any other thoughts on Toronto?
No, I'm good to move it along. He would have been the next guy I mentioned.
All right, let's talk about New Orleans and Detroit then. The Pistons, 4.5-point dogs at home, 221 point total. Actually, coming off of that win against Boston, the Celtics are just really hurt. Did they end up losing today against did they lose?
Didn't see.
Okay.
Didn't have it on. I had
unbelievable. I'm telling you, man, the Celtics are in trouble. I went on and looked at some Celtics blogs the other day just because I get pleasure in it, but I also had to do some research. They are sounding the alarm, fellas. Sure. But anyway, the Pelicans facing the Detroit team that just handled them the other day, still a bad Detroit team. There's no doubt about it. It's so hard to get to the Pels though, man. Like everyone's so similar. I sound like a broken record saying that about Toronto, but it's kind of tough at these current price points. Ingram and Zion both above $8,000. Maybe I'm missing something. What do you have here for the Pels?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'd like to roster Ingram. I'd like to roster Zion and his just reliable point scoring, but I fantasy point scoring. I just think they're priced appropriately for who they are and what we expect from them. Ingram 8,200 and 8,400 across sites. Zion 83 and 81. Those are prices for guys who are going to put up 35 to 42 fantasy points for you. 1.14 fantasy points per minute for Ingram. 1.21 from Zion, with 35 and 32 minute projections. I just think they're right in line with what they should be. And it doesn't really make their numbers pop. Beyond that, they're also owned where they should be. So they're guys who are fine. I would like them to stand out more. I like getting to them. I think they're quality players. I just don't think that there's an opportunity for us NBA DFS wise. Geez, I'm speaking in SEO terms now. All that writing I did today.
An NBA DFS picks for Saturday, July 23rd. Right.
So, I think that just takes them, not off the board, but it definitely, pushes them down and makes them take what you get kind of plays.
If people keep fading Lonzo and his price drops into that like low 6K range, I'll have a lot of him. He's shooting much better from three, double-digit three-point attempts in back-to-back games, 30-plus minutes in all of these games, 34-plus in competitive ones. That's a spot that I'll be paying close attention to, and he's playing much better basketball. Maybe he sees what his brother's doing in Charlotte, and he doesn't want to play second fiddle anymore. But I'm with you, Terry. I think New Orleans is just a difficult team to get to. If you had to get to them, who would it be?
Probably Zion and just the safety of production. But the small forward spot is, I think I would take Zion and the safety of production at the power forward, despite liking some better options there. I think he's a mix-in option there. He'll rotate through some of my shares.
We're getting just an incredibly timely news. The basketball gods are smiling down upon us, Terry. First of all, I do want to point out that the Hornets' available players, they have 9: Graham, Rozier, Ball, Bridges, Zeller, Monk, McDaniels, Biyombo, and Nick Richards. So maybe McDaniels for the guy that has. Maybe McDaniels does see a few additional minutes. Like we knew they only had 9, but maybe he does. It's risky though. You still have Monk. You still have guys that can soak up small ball, small forward minutes. So I'm not super excited about that. But Mason Plumlee is on track to play, Terry. What are we doing with the Pistons?
Plumlee is in. Okay.
He is on track to play.
So, yeah, he was out in everything I was looking at. So I think that might take down my expectations for Blake Griffin just a little bit. I don't know necessarily that we're going to see him have the opportunity to the ceiling. I still like the price, 5,200 on FanDuel as a power forward. I think he's a value there, but I think maybe that knocks him down a little bit. I think Jeremy Grant probably still reasonable expectation of hitting that value. The guy that it's going to impact is we can wipe Isaiah Stewart as being a potential value off the board, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I just don't know what there is in this Detroit team. Like Jeremy Grant, I'm fine with continuing to play him. I worry that his efficiency is probably going to take a bit of a hit. And I don't necessarily anticipate him finishing the season with absurdly good numbers. But as we discussed on the strategy show today, Monday through Monday, so 7 days a week, every day, 10 a.m. Eastern, be sure to check that out. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. That Jeremy Grant's going to have to keep shooting no matter who's on the floor. Blake Griffin is a shell of his old self. Derrick Rose is gone, and he was providing instant offense off the bench. Like, they just don't have offensive players. Wayne Ellington's a spot-up three-point shooter. There's just not a lot here. And I think if you're looking to roster someone in this price range, maybe you come to the 75, you got 75, 7,400 remaining. I think you can take solace at least in knowing take solace. It just reminds me of that Top Shot email that Jeremy Grant is at least going to get up a lot of shots.
Yeah, and I think taking solace is really all we can look for in when we make our DFS picks. So, yeah, that's not the most appealing adjective that you can apply to a guy in terms of what his value looks like. I agree. He's on the board for sure because he's going to have to produce for this team and continue doing so. We've seen his usage rate climb from 17.7 last year to 25.8 with the new team. So, I mean,
Blake Griffin's out. Here we go.
Isaiah Stewart back on the board.
By the way, I promise I will not interrupt you unless it's important.
Dude, that was well worth interrupting for.
I can't guarantee that, but I promise I will try. That's big news, Terry. Are people going to chase that ridiculously efficient Sadiq Bey game now with Sega Demboyo also out?
That's another one that I hadn't given too much consideration to.
I think they're going to chase hard, man.
Yeah, I don't dislike the price. I want to see where he comes up in Alex's next run of projections, 0.77 fantasy points per minute so far, but obviously very changed role. He would be interesting on FanDuel at 4,500 at the small forward spot. Using him small forward and power forward on DK could definitely see him relevant at 44. So yeah, I think that could make some sense. But if the public starts really chasing it, unless the numbers that come up in my projections and Alex's projections, it could be a spot where I just jump off because there's too much volume on it.
Yeah, if he comes, oh God, Andre Drummond's out as well. We're gonna need 8 hours for this, man.
This is supposed to happen on Live Before Lock. I thought I was going to avoid this today.
I know. Tell me about it. So we'll get through. Well, let's hit on all the important stuff, and then these guys in Live Before Lock can make sure to come in and hit on everything else as well. But I just wanted to point out that Sego Demboyo shot 10 of 12 the other day, and 7 for 7 from 3. Okay. He has a 54% EFG. He's shooting 41% from 3 this season, 40% from the field. I'm not saying he's been shooting miserably, but like that type of production, if you're looking at it, you have to at least see it and say, all right, well, he's actually not a very good rebounder. He's a fine shooter, but he's not electric. And, he rebounds at a 10% clip. So double-digit rebounds in 25, 27 minutes is also going to be, pretty tough to get to. So I think he's a fine value option, but I'm with you. If he's going to be super chalky, Bey might be a guy that you look to get away from a little bit, at least come in underweight on.
Yeah, and anytime you're chasing just a total outlier of a box score like that, you're probably doing something wrong. That's not what we want to do. We want to chase, consistent production or, extreme changes in role for guys who are consistent when they get that change in role. So, yeah, just seeing an outlier, crazy, awesome box score is nice, but definitely not something that we want to really consider as we're making these decisions. I'm just trying to get this most recent upload in here, see if anything changed on these guys.
While you do that,
Doesn't look like it caught it yet.
28.2% usage for Jeremy Grant without Griffin and Rose this season, 1.16 fantasy points per minute. So not bad. Sadiq Bey's at 0.82 in that situation.
Yeah, so Grant was already in play and not drawing quite enough ownership given his chance of success, chance of being in the optimal. I expect that'll push him even higher up. So people might get to him a little bit more now, but I think his value probably increases on the slate at the small forward spot.
All right. Hit that thumbs up if you're appreciating this analysis as all the news rolls in, and subscribe to the channel. Become part of that Awesemo community. Let's talk about Portland and Dallas, Terry. We've got Portland on the road in Dallas, 5-point dogs, 236 total. So monster total here, which is exactly why you're seeing Damian Lillard's ownership coming in very high, not very high, but reasonably high, clearly the highest from this team, 19% on DraftKings, and over on FanDuel, you have him, and I'm assuming we'll get an update soon, at 19% as well. So what are you doing with Portland?
Yeah, it's the Dame story for me. I definitely think he is the prime play from this. Well, not from the entire game because there are guys I like on the other side of it, but from the Portland side of things, for sure, he's the guy I really want to get to. Can roster a little bit of Gary Trent, but I think the price increase on him is not taking him off the board, but definitely taking some of the gleam off of him as far as his value being a value play. So really, I want to get to a significant amount of Dame. I don't think he's drawing a good amount of ownership, like you said, but sub 20% on both sites. I know it's a big slate. I know there are numerous point guard options, but I just can't resist the appeal of the upside of Dame without CJ out there and just in this big spot. I know he hasn't really blasted through that ceiling, but I feel like that game's coming. Is just taking a look. His assist rate spiked from 45.7 for the season to 58.3% over the sample since McCollum's been out. His usage jumped, but only from 30.5 to 32.5. That's still really high. So he's just is 35.2 minutes per game, and his scoring average only went up from 29 points for the season to 30.7 real life points. I just feel like there's more upside in Dame. We saw it last year. We know that there's more production than this there. So I want to get to him. I want to be on him when that C changes. And I think for 9,500 on FanDuel, he's probably not quite priced appropriately. So definitely give me some Dame.
All right. I like him too. As far as the rest of this team goes, yeah, Enes Kanter, I'm fine with. I think there's a lot of good options at center, and it's going to open up more with Andre Drummond out.
Yeah.
Anthony Simons is really cheap. We've seen Terry Stotts give him more or give him extended run when he's shooting well, but it's a super risky proposition. Like if you're looking for a really cheap guy and you think, he can play well, fine. But I think the news Griffin news is going to open things up. And my guess, Terry, is that you're not going to need to look towards anyone like Simons once we're done this show.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to need him at all on either site, but definitely, was worth mentioning and was probably somebody on the radar for a lot of people out there, given his numbers and Alex's ratings through the day, given the price and the opportunity. But I just, to your point, don't think we're going to need him. Don't have any need for priced up Robert Covington. Don't really need to get to Rodney Hood, Carmelo Anthony. So a little bit of Gary Trent and a lot of Dame Lillard for me.
All right, on the other side, Luka Doncic getting some love on DraftKings. FanDuel as well, but Porzingis is coming in with the highest ownership there. As it stands, Dallas's 120.5 implied total is the highest on this slate overall, Terry. So that's going to open things up for some people. That's going to open some eyes up, I should say, starting with Luka and Kristaps. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's primarily on Luka and Kristaps, of course. I think Luka's one of the slate leading choices just across everything, regardless of price, regardless of position. He's just a monster producer, 1.53 fantasy point per minute rate for the year. Everybody in Dallas is healthy, so we can figure that it's going to be maybe a little bit below that, but that's relatively accurate for who Luka's going to be, regardless of situation. That trails only Giannis and Jokic as slate leaders. And hilariously, as I put it in the deep dive, ties with Mo Bamba for point per minute production. So he's just totally relevant regardless of price. 35.3 minutes per game, 28.5 real life points, 35.3 usage, 27.5 rebounding rate, which is awesome for a point guard, and a 54.5 assist rate. He's just a monster. Since Porzingis is back, 34% usage rate, 24.8% rebounding. Assists drop a little bit to 50.9, but quality teammate out there for him to play off of, playing with alongside Porzingis and Timmy this year, 106 minutes, 1.55 fantasy point per minute rate. Just a monster producer. So happy to pay up to Luka all the time. The ownership concerns me a little bit on Porzingis. He's a play I like to get to when the field isn't necessarily there, and it looks like the field is doubling up his optimal lineup rate on FanDuel. Liked him a lot better before that happened. So I think we can look for other options. I do like him for the opportunity to produce for the price for only 8,000. But the public ownership is starting to make me think maybe I can get to some of these other power forwards, particularly with some of the emerging value.
Who would you say your top options from this game are?
I like Dame. It's the point guards, Dame and Luka.
All right,
not even
sounds
complicated.
good.
Yeah.
Hey, SuperDraft, sponsor of the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. Did you know they're partnered, with Caesars Rewards to transform the DFS industry forever? I'm sure many of you did, but if you don't, it's pretty exciting because the opportunity to make serious cash has never been better for a DFS player, having low rake, high stakes contests that are expecting huge overlay as SuperDraft rapidly grows. So expanding, getting the foothold in this industry, which always means you're going to see a decent amount of overlay. And you got the $50,000 NBA jump shot tonight, 10K up top. It's an awesome format where you're playing multipliers, not salaries. And if you're getting into the ground floor like so many other people, you're not getting in so far behind the pack that you have to play catch up with a ridiculous learning curve. There's also a huge promo that we've got going on. If you use Awesemo 21, AWESEMO 21, all one word, get $50 free when you deposit $50 or more. Go to SuperDraft, download the app, or go to superdraft.io and check it out. Again, $50,000 NBA jump shot tonight. Caesars rewards points that you can use at any Caesars. Just a ton of reasons to be playing there now. And the format, well, I've said many times, I hate when sites try and reinvent the wheel when it comes to fantasy. SuperDraft didn't reinvent it. They just made a really, really awesome alternative that you can use all of your research and all of your projections for right here and transfer them over to that. So use Awesemo 21, AWESEMO 21, get $50 free on your first deposit of $50 or more. All right, Terry, let's talk about Milwaukee and OKC. The Bucks here remaining without Drew Holiday and OKC remaining without SGA and Theo Maledon. Do you have any real interest in Milwaukee today? Is there anyone that stands out to you as a very good play?
The very good player, Giannis. I think definitely.
No. The very good play. No, not a good player. There's a lot of them.
He's both, I think, on this one. I think I can get to Giannis, particularly on FanDuel. Big price tag on him at the power forward spot, and there are some emergent values at power forward. But it looks like in the last update, he's landing in 20.5% of the optimals now. He'll be owned, definitely a little bit beyond that. But I think that's a mark that we can start to chase when Giannis starts coming up that frequently in optimal lineups. 1.6 fantasy point producer per minute. You guys don't really need me to sell Giannis Antetokounmpo to you. I think, boy, did I stumble across that last name into the next word.
It sounded like you actually just mumbled the entire name. I wasn't sure what was going on.
I should just stick with Giannis most of the time.
Love me some Giannis.
Chris Middleton would be the other guy who stands out. It's, again, kind of an obvious call, but he definitely stands out in terms of Alex's rates for optimal lineup appearance. And I like the price, 8,000 small forward on FanDuel. I think there's a little bit of upside to squeeze there, and definitely 7,800 at shooting guard and small forward on DraftKings. I think we have a lot to work with there. You can move him around to different positions. Really like the player. One of my least favorite guys to write about because I grew up in a town called Middletown. So I mistype his name literally every time.
All right. Would you say those are the two guys you really like from this side?
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
So with OKC, I talked about it earlier today. Al Horford is averaging over a fantasy point, 1.5 fantasy points per minute without SGA and Hill off the floor and Theo Maledon, if you want to include him as well. Not a ton of minutes, slightly over 100. But the issue I have here is going up against Milwaukee. The Bucks have not looked the same as they did last year, not as dominant. They just got steamrolled by a Utah team that you just can't score on right now. But they are markedly better than OKC. I admire the Thunder for taking the Lakers to OT twice, but they lost both of those. I think this one could get out of hand. Does that mean much? Not necessarily, but it also means that with Drummond out, now you get Jarrett Allen. You have a few good options at center. I probably don't end up much on Al Horford, but aside from that, Hamidou Diallo, Jackson, all of these guys coming in very low double-digit ownership on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think there are options in those guys. I agree on Horford. He's a guy I like the idea of rostering more than it looked like I would have been getting to him if I was running crunches, just given the 6,900 price. But I love what he's doing, in terms of the amount that he's touching the ball in this situation. The assist rate is great. So definitely like the player and would like to get to him. But I think there are better center values, particularly where we're only getting one of them on FanDuel. If you were mixing and matching him around at 6,900, you're only doing it between two spots on DK. But I think he adds a little bit of utility there. If you wanted to put him as a second center in the util spot, maybe you get away with that. But not a guy I'm going to go out of my way for to the degree that I thought maybe I would earlier in the day. Diallo, definitely in play, has been all along these last 2 weeks now, I guess. 6,800 now on FanDuel, still 22% optimal lineup rate from Awesemo. Comes up $300 more over on DK, but still a relatively strong optimal lineup rate. Primary ball handler for them, to picking up the lion's share of the point guard minutes now with SGA, with Hill, and with Mallet on all sidelines. So I think he makes sense to go back to again, despite a little bit more of a meaty price tag on him. Let's see, 16.1 real life points, 33.1 minutes on only 20% usage, with a 20.3 rebound rate and a 23.5 assist rate in the recent games. So he's definitely a key part of the slate again. As much as didn't think we were going to be rostering this much Hamidou Diallo like all season coming into the year, I think we have to go back to him.
All right. So the next game is just not very good for DFS purposes. This is one of a couple that I said we'd be getting to. Orlando at Phoenix, 10-point dogs on the road. The Suns look phenomenal lately. This game has a 213 total in 2021. Amazing, right? The Suns are playing at a bottom 3 pace over the last month. They have the 7th best defensive rating over that same span. I mean, I'm looking at this game essentially in its entirety, especially if you're projecting Cole Anthony and Evan Fournier to be in. James Ennis is also questionable. Frank Jackson's out. We don't have that news. So as of now, I just don't really have any interest in either side of this one outside of maybe some sprinkles.
Yeah, it's about that level. I'm curious to see what happens with Vooch for Alex now that we've got Drummond coming off the board as a highly optimal center in previous runs of those simulations. That could be a little interesting, but he's gotten priced up a little bit. He's at 99 on FanDuel now, 98 on DK, given the amazing recent production and the significant role that he's had while Gordon's been out. It makes sense that he's expensive, but that was tarnishing his ability to get into the optimal lineups a little bit and was definitely taking him down a peg. He might be a little bit more relevant now. Nobody else for me was really popping. Terence Ross was the next most relevant guy, and I don't like getting to Terence Ross really. I don't trust the scoring dependent type guys. But given the frequency of optimal lineup now in this most recent update, unless the ownership creeps up significantly, I think it makes sense as a leverage play. A $5,200 shooting guard on FanDuel at a position I talked about already is kind of flat. All the way up at 6,100 on DK, a lot tougher of an ask. Would not roster Terence Ross in anything other than a few drips and drabs over there. But I think he's probably in play maybe as a value on FanDuel.
He was absolutely chucking last game. Started the game off like 0 for 8. Ended up finishing 7 for 20. So I'm not thrilled about him, but I can tell you this much. If Evan Fournier and Anthony and Gordon's already out, sorry, but with them off the floor this year, 0.92 fantasy points per minute for Terence Ross and 28.4% usage rate. That trails only Nikola Vucevic. So if those guys do sit, I think it opens things up for Terence Ross a lot. But if all of them are active, then it's just there's no real meat left on the bone for any of these players. And I think that's the problem. So,
it's a spot that maybe makes some sense to leave as a hot swap where you've got a guy in that spot where he costs the same or a little bit more, and you can actively swap some shares over to Ross if we get that news, but maybe don't build your lineups around him.
Yeah, absolutely. So just pay close attention to that. Maybe we'll get some news for Live Before Lock. They're coming up immediately after us. It's EMac and Eric Linquist. They'll take you up till 7 p.m. Lock. Let's move on to the next one. Unless you have anything for Phoenix, I just don't see much viable.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't getting there. Kaminsky was looking better earlier in the day, but things changed, I guess, somewhere along the way. So he's off the board. Yeah, nobody.
I don't know if the giveaway we were doing is still open. I'm assuming not, but it was predict who wins the Daytona 500. And since I believe it's still delayed, maybe it's still on there. Maybe you can answer. We're giving away 5 monthly Awesemo Plus passes. So check that out. I'm not sure. Just playing the middleman role here. Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. Anthony Davis questionable. LeBron's expected to play. We'll get to the Denver side in a minute, but if Davis plays, I don't know how much interest you have. If he's out, Kyle Kuzma's played pretty considerable minutes. Even with Davis in, he played 32 minutes last game. What are your thoughts on LA here against the Nuggets?
Yeah, I guess Kuzma could pick up a little bit of relevance. Like you said, he got a surprising amount of minutes the other night. It was a tight game, and he saw 32 minutes, played the entire fourth quarter. He's just not somebody we have, significant news on right now, and not somebody who really thrusts himself into major relevance unless he's underpriced. And I think at 5,800 on FanDuel, 6,400 on DK, I think even if he gets that role change, he's not going to have like shocking value where you need to get this guy as a building block. I think he'll be fine for that money, given a major uptick in minutes and if Davis sits. But I don't know that we need to get to him. So when news pops on that, which I think it's pretty decent chance that Davis sits again. That just sounds like a wonky kind of injury that there's even against a contender in the West. I just don't see them needing to push him here. So I'd be skeptical about him going. The guy that it might have some impact on just from he'd be the big dog on the team would be LeBron. But we see that his rates don't really change. His numbers don't change all that significantly when Davis comes off. So it would just be the matter of he's the guy to go to on that team now. And I don't think it really thrusts him into immense relevance either, given his pricing and given some of the other options. So it would be LeBron for me. If I had to choose somebody if Davis sits, it would probably be nobody from this team if Davis goes.
That's where I'm at as well. Thank you for the super chat from where are you at? YZZZZZZZZZ7Z. He says Ross, Brooks, or Graham at shooting guard on FanDuel. I'm going Graham there, Terry.
Graham sounds right to me, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going Graham there. Brooks is fine. And Ross, if these guys are active, you don't want that to begin with. Denver, Jamal Murray, questionable. We have no Dozier, we have no Harris, and no Will Barton. Michael Porter Jr. is a 1.14 fantasy point per minute guy without Murray, 1.26 without Murray and Barton, while Jokic without Murray this season. And I didn't go back to last season because he's been on an entirely different level. 35.5% usage, 49% assists, and 1.7 fantasy points per minute. This Jamal Murray news is pretty significant today, even though it's a very tough team against the Lakers, or tough matchup against the Lakers team that ranks #1 in defensive rating. Weird spot, Terry.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to thrust two guys who were not the most comfortable rosters, in my mind anyway, into significant relevance with Porter seeing the more relevant share there. But JaMychal Green also being, probably pretty relevant on this slate as well, given his numbers in what Alex has. But uncomfortable rosters overall for me. Green, 0.96 fantasy point producer for the season. Porter, 1.10, a little bit better. You mentioned the uptick in the situation if Murray's out, which would make me like him a little bit more. I just don't love putting this guy in my lineup. Don't mind the price, 5,800 at the small forward spot. I think he's definitely in play, and it's a play where I'm going to follow process. I talk about it a lot. I get my bias, my opinions out of the process and let the numbers fall where they may. So I think that's going to push him into my lineups. I'm not going to be happy when I click the scores and see that he's only put up 22 fantasy points or whatever he finishes with tonight, but I will probably have a pretty wide share of him despite a hefty public ownership.
Okay. Rodney Hood is ruled out, by the way. Any other thoughts on the Denver Nuggets here, given the situation in Denver tonight with the injuries?
Happy to pay up for Jokic in any opportunity. He is a guy I typically have to force just because he's always high priced, and they're always. I play mostly on FanDuel, so there are always single center options that are value options that push him out of play for me. But I like to force him in because he's so productive, because he's got a decent shot from the top of the board of being in the optimals, and because the public isn't getting to him at the appropriate rate. So I can get over the field on Jokic, and you don't have to do any dramatic thing to do that. You can double up his ownership and roster him under 20% in your lineup. So it's not like you're sacrificing a significant share of your lineups to get him in, and you're getting one of the best players in the world.
Yep, for sure. Michael Porter Jr., just one last thing on him. He is getting quite a bit of ownership, but really like him today. And given how the news breaks, or depending on how the news breaks in Denver, Michael Porter Jr. could be an even more spectacular play here. So pay close attention to that. No Jamal Murray is going to be huge, but no Will Barton, already pretty significant for someone like Porter Jr. Cleveland and the LA Clippers, we got the news recently, no Andre Drummond, Terry, and that means that even though he wasn't playing big minutes prior to this in his last two games, 16 and 17 respectively, you would expect Jarrett Allen to see a pretty considerable bump in playing time, but he is going up against the Clippers. They are double-digit dogs at the Staples Center. It's a little bit concerning here.
Yeah, I think it's concerning, but I think it's that's something that I probably am going to want to eliminate from my mind when just putting these lineups together, because Jarrett Allen at the 6,900 salary, slotting in as a power forward on FanDuel, getting him at center on DraftKings, I think has a lot of utility now on this slate. I think taking Drummond off the top and giving him starters minutes is going to make a pretty significant change for me in what I expect from him in terms of my version of boom score, which is on target share, Alex's boom score, and our optimal lineup appearance rate. Doesn't look like the last one is updated for the news yet. I think that simulation is probably being run now. So when we get that news, I expect we're going to see a massive jump from him in the amount of times he appears optimal. The public will start to chase it as well. The ownership hasn't caught up yet in our most recent update, but I think he makes all the sense in the world as a $6,900 player. 1.16 fantasy points per minute for the year. Should probably see a higher rate than that. A lot of that comes from his time in Brooklyn. So I think he's going to get a significant look tonight in that front court.
All right. What's his ownership at right now? Do we know?
It hasn't caught up. The last update I have is still 0.1. So I don't think it's going to be that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that either. Who was the last guy you mentioned?
That was Jarrett Allen. But yeah, I can jump into the backcourt if you want. Where you want to?
Well, I was reading some comments and I wanted to make sure I wasn't, or I didn't miss something. But Taurean Prince is. Did you mention him?
I didn't.
Okay, so
he's on the board.
Taurean Prince is not a fantasy point per minute guy, but I do anticipate seeing a decent amount of playing time. They still have no Kevin Love. They still have no Larry Nance. You had Jarrett Allen starting alongside Andre Drummond in the front court, right? So when you take all of that, and obviously not every game he was starting alongside of him, but Taurean Prince, assuming he's starting, is very likely to see an uptick in minutes today as well, because they're just thinned out in this front court. And I think that's going to lead to a decent amount of minutes for him today. I could see him getting upwards of 27, 28.
Yeah, it makes some sense. I was just looking at Popcorn Machine to check out the last couple of games. Looks like he only went 20 in the most recent game.
20, 24, and 25.
Okay. So, yeah, there's definitely upside for him to get minutes. And at the price, he's obviously going to be in play. Like you said, not a massive producer by any means, but 0.87 fantasy points per minute is relevant for a $4,500 guy on DK, $4,800 small forward on FanDuel. So I think he's going to thrust himself into relevance. It looks like he picked up a decent uptick in his median projection from Alex. So, yeah, Alex has him getting 27 minutes now and over a 25-point fantasy point projection on FanDuel, 26 on DK, just in the median projection. So I think he's got a nice shot to put up a decent score as well. Maybe not a massive, ceiling score, but we don't need him to put up a monster score. He just needs to hit probably something in, I would imagine, the mid 30s, given the $4,000 price to pay off where we need him to be ceiling wise.
He's around 20 or 12% ownership right now. I'll tell you this much: if our next update comes out and Sadiq Bey is real chalky and Taurean Prince is getting a fraction or a third of that ownership, I have no problem going there instead in some lineups. Any other? We're really up against it because we had so much news break. So I'll let you close out this game, and then we'll get to Memphis and Sacramento and turn it over to EMac and Eric.
Kawhi Leonard from the other side of this one. If you want to get anybody, I don't really think anybody else is going to see much relevance. Baca just not seeing enough time. Nick Batum, the price is kind of caught up with him. He's a value-ish kind of a producer regardless, but I think 5,300 on FanDuel, probably a little too much to pay for him. 49 on DK is okay. Flexing between small forward and power forward. Think he's got a little bit more utility on that site, but those guys are mix and match options. It begins and ends with Kawhi on the Clippers for me.
All right, and for anyone wondering, with all of these guys off for the Cleveland Cavaliers this season, it's been tough because you've had Love, Nance, Drummond, Allen, all of them get hurt. You just don't have you don't have a huge sample, but Darius Garland's a fantasy point per minute guy in this situation. Colin Sexton, 1.05. So I get it, but it's going to be I think it's going to be a really ugly game, and they've been getting smoked time in and time out. Close us out, Terry. Memphis and Sacramento. What do we got here?
Memphis and Sacramento. We've got the game that I forgot was still on the board to be talked about. Let's see. Kyle Anderson is somewhat in play. Dylan Brooks is somewhat in play. He got mentioned earlier as an affordable shooting guard option. John Morant gets reasonable numbers on Alex's board, as does Jonas Valanciunas. So there are some guys on the Memphis side of things that are reasonable plays. I don't think any of them are smash play, half the roster, and they look like they're all getting basically owned where they should be. And they're all basically, well, I shouldn't say basically priced where they should be, because I do think the 7,100 for J-Val and John Morant is a discount on FanDuel, but I think the public is kind of soaking up the advantage that you gain from that discount. So I think we're rostering them probably around the field on both sites. I want to get to some shares of them because I do think there is some upside and at least some median score utility in all of those guys. So it's just going to be a matter of where process kind of shakes them out, but I don't expect to be very far above or below the field on any of them.
All right. Guys, thanks for bearing with us. It's a lot of news coming in today. Had to make some quick pivots on our feet or on our asses in our chairs, which is where we always are. Thanks for hanging out as always. Good luck tonight. And remember, hit that thumbs up and subscribe, but don't go anywhere. You still got another hour to do that. EMac, Eric Linquist coming up next. It's the NBA Live Before Lock presented by SuperDraft right now. Later.
Great show. Fun time.
Yep, Anthony Davis. I owe him one. I missed him on the last show. Can you pull it?
A 20 spot, dear Lord.
Oh yeah. 5 on the hands. All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on Live Before Lock, Sunday night special here. This is going to be a fun one. We have all sorts of news waiting. I was doing the run sheet, and I was just going to put the games that had important injury news. You'll note, Eric, all 9 games are on there. I am joined by Eric Linquist, and we have Sunday, the day of rest, is what we're going to call this for some NBA players. Looking at you, Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin.
It's going to get weird. It's going to get weird.
Oh, good times. All right. Well, let's start off with the super chat and then we'll kind of roll through a few things. But this one here is from Anthony Davis. And he says, this is a fantasy cruncher, Charlotte FanDuel. Would you make a rule limiting the number of Rozier, Melo, Monk, and Graham in the same lineup?
I probably would leave it to 3 of the 4 because I find it tough on this slate because we have other value that's emerged in other places. For me, I guess I hadn't really thought about it. I guess I was capping 3 per team on just about anything, but God, Monk.
So running it, just setting the stage, they only have 9 available players.
Correct.
The Martin twins are out. Jordan's very sad. Did you know they're twins?
I did not know that they were twins.
I think they are. I'm assuming they are.
Yeah, we're just lying on live before lock now.
PJ Washington is out. Gordon Hayward is out. Miles Bridges will be starting. 9 total available players, which now with that context, it makes a little more sense that do you want to go 4? I think 3 is still good, but
yeah. I think you could get away with playing 4. Again, are you playing a large field, small field, cash? Like what's the context there too? Because I think it depends. I would find it difficult to imagine because of what just happened in the last 15, 20 minutes that you would want to have 4 in a lineup. I think 3 was kind of where I think the sweet spot is, because you do still need everybody to achieve an upside. Like they can't just meet their projection and sit on that and be happy with it. I would be looking at getting 3 at the most, I believe, for the way that I play.
All right. See, look, we got that one out of the way. Got to ask for some likes. I think Lofty forgot to. By the way, we just crested over 51,000 subscribers. Thank you. Wow. Only 49,000 more until we get to 100,000. But you know what? We're just a few shy of 30,000 on the Awesemo_com Twitter handle. As soon as we get to 30,000 followers, we will be giving away 31-week all access packages. So go check that out. Follow it, Awesemo_com. Plus, they do a giveaway every day. So you'll want to check that out. Today's was the Daytona 500. That race is already starting. I gave you the breakdown. I said, this one is all math. There is no strategy. I hope you didn't spend a lot of time strategizing.
No, I think one of the beautiful things about you and me, it's this Eric connection we already have. We're like, we talked a lot of football throughout the year. We were going back and forth, sharing notes on that. I never played NASCAR DFS in my entire life, like maybe a couple random times during the early stages of the pandemic when it was the only thing on. I might have fired a couple, but you definitely gave me the goods coming into this, and then it didn't matter. It was just carnage, absolute carnage.
All right, shout out there to Wheels. I see he's in the chat here. We did miss a super chat, so I'm gonna. I don't know who this was from, but here it is. So it's Jonas Valanciunas going against Sacramento, or choose one of the 3 or rank.
Okay.
Jonas Valanciunas against Sacramento. He's my number 1. I think he's in a phenomenal spot. He's averaging 31 and a half minutes in the 3 games he started since coming back from COVID. This is for Gene B. Kim.
Okay.
Option 2, Kristaps Porzingis, the number 2 guy in a 2-man show there in Dallas, or Zion versus Detroit, the man who can only get 43 and a half DK points per game, but he will never get more or less than 43 and a half DK points per game.
Yeah.
Zion.
But Zion's coming off.
He set a personal high scoring record and didn't crack 50 points.
Right.
50 points. That's hard to do.
He also only had 2 rebounds, which I don't expect to be the norm for him going forward. So for his scoring output being fantastic, yeah, some of the ancillary stats didn't necessarily get there, but I think I have the exact same order as you. I'd go 1 Jonas, 2, I'd go Zion, because I think Zion has he's going to start continuing to exceed our expectations going forward here. I think I've been trying to get low on him in a couple of like top score on the slate props. He almost got there with the 36 the other night. I've been kind of buying low on him. Now it's not fun to see those odds creep up to like plus 450 at times. I'm like, I'm less bullish on that, but back at those plus 800 numbers, I was firing those pretty frequently.
All right, let's go through each of the games and we'll call out their important information. So starting off, Minnesota at Toronto, -8 for Toronto, 230 over under. Minnesota is going to be without Jarrett Culver and D'Angelo Russell. Toronto, once again, without OG Anunoby. Yuta Watanabe is not available. And then Pat McCaw, ceremonial roster spot at this point, not available. Do you like anybody in this particular game? And I shout out to Fred Van Elite. The fan club did fill. You guys got to follow me on Twitter. I'm giving away a 1-month subscription in every one of those contests. So,
yeah, it's hard not to like some pieces of a 230 game. I think something that was talked on the strategy show this morning was a great point with Josh Engelman. I've always had a tough time differentiating between Lowry, Van Vliet, and Siakam. And so it always comes down to me for FanDuel positionality. I always end up with a little bit more Siakam because he kind of ends up being a lower owned pivot just because of how high that salary has gotten to. Plus he's at a small forward position, which tends to be a little bit weaker. Kyle Lowry always kind of is my default pick between the 3 because of his cheap salary tag on both spots, and you get a little bit of a discount off of them. But then the guy who's been outperforming all of them, Fred VanVleet, has just been an absolute fire. I mean, the guy's an NBA Jam meme himself. Like, he's unbelievable. Some of the hot ceiling nights we've seen out of him. So I really have no problem with all 3. It's just always difficult to find out which one's going to pop. Today, right now, Lowry is my highest owned between the 3, but I still would have some interest going to Siakam, especially over on FanDuel for that small forward spot.
All right. And then moving on to the next one, we have New Orleans and Detroit. New Orleans, everybody's all healthy. Detroit, no Blake Griffin. Sekou Doumbouya is in the concussion protocol. Frank Jackson, one of their reserve point guards, is out. I point that out because there's no more Derrick Rose. Plumlee is going to play. He missed, I think it was 2 games now with bursitis in his elbow. Mm-hmm. I'm not really doing cartwheels for any of these guys either. I've also set my placeholder lineup, so I only have one player from the 7 o'clock games. That's Fred VanVleet in the Fred Van Elite fan club. And then I put everybody else to the 7:30 games because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and I'm playing hockey tonight too. I may be foregoing these first 3 games.
Can you throw some Jeremy Grant in your life too? I would find myself very, very remiss not to play Jeremy Grant.
That's what I was going to ask is who am I leaving on the table?
Okay, so if we're going to script the EMac, I want to be lazy and not play the early games playbook. Jeremy Grant is at the top of that list for me. A guy that projects phenomenally well in every right. 36 minutes projection right now at the moment. 1.1 or 1.05 fantasy point per minute guy. It's really, really hard for me to say on this slate that I wouldn't have a ton of Jeremy Grant at that price point, 7,400 and 7,600 on FanDuel. Like that needs to be included because the ceiling is massive at that number.
All right. Anybody else popping for you from this game?
Eric Bledsoe always pops for me, and I hate it. And I hate how much I'm going to get on FanDuel. It's really, really gross. Shooting guard isn't the strongest position today. 4,800, 0.82 fantasy point per minute guy. We've seen some 3-point upside from him, even of late. It's never a glorious, beautiful play by any means. He just always projects so much better for me than I feel like even Alex or anybody else. Like, I'm going to have a tough time getting away from him on FanDuel. So that's the guy on the New Orleans side. Zion, I'm going to continue to buy into. I know he's been super, super consistent, which is a beautiful thing. I still think that there's a crazy amount of upside there. He's going to take over a couple of these games going forward. And I think you want to be on board. We've seen some scoring outputs of 29 and 36 the last 2 games. I'm excited to see kind of where that ceiling can get to. If he can start filling up the box score, see those rebounding outputs matching some of the scoring outputs there going forward. And I think they will. I think there's no reason to think that they won't.
All right. I do want to mention we are sponsored by SuperDraft. So I want to point a couple things out for them. They have now partnered with the Caesars Palace. So they have Caesars Rewards, which are what they're giving back as part of their player point give backs. And you can utilize those at any Caesars property worldwide. So that's kind of cool. So they're looking to change the DFS industry forever. We'll see if that happens. This is an opportunity to make some serious cash, though. I want to point out that they are using the tried and true methodology of overlay as a marketing tool. So when we talked about this on Saturday, the vast majority of their contests, including some triple ups and double ups, went off 20-25% empty, or I guess only 75% full, easier way of saying it. So you're definitely going to want to check that out tonight. They have a $50,000 contest, $15 to get in, $10,000 to first. They also have a $15,000 contest. It's $4 to get in, and that is $2,000 to first. And then they have the $1 $7,500 contest. Hey, it costs $1 to get into that one. But if you use the promo code Awesemo21, that's Awesemo21, put in $50 for your first deposit, they will give you $50 right away. Best way to do that. All right, moving on to game number 3 of the 7 o'clock hour. That would be the Spurs and Charlotte. Charlotte 4-point home dogs. We kind of talked about them a little bit. No LaMarcus Aldridge, 227 over under here. Charlotte without Hayward, PJ Washington, Cody and Caleb Martin. And I said Miles Bridges is starting. We sort of hit on those guys. Feather in their value plays. It's hard to say which one you like best. Any one of them is capable of 40, 45, maybe even 50 fantasy points. Is LaMelo your guy?
Yeah, LaMelo is going to continue to be my guy. I've rode it all the way to the top. It feels nice to be there. 7,800 is just a misprice over on FanDuel for the level of production that we've seen out of him. 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy. I'm going to have tons and tons and tons of him over on FanDuel. And what I was talking about a little in the chat. So like Bledsoe's kind of my pivot because I'm getting so much LaMelo. I'm trying to get a little light on a 7K Terry Rozier. I like that number back on DraftKings. When it was sitting around 6,100, it's up to 7,400 over there now. 76 or 7K over on FanDuel. So I'm going to be lighter there. Even a 1 point fantasy point per minute guy, I get the intrigue there, but I don't want to stack him, Graham, and Ball into a bunch of lineups. And Graham, you're getting 5,200 there. That's just such a great discount on FanDuel to be going down to him. So I have much more interest there. 6,100 on DraftKings is fine, but not as enthusiastic as getting to Ball, who just does everything.
All right, and then their official starting lineup is going to be Graham, Rozier, Ball, Bridges, and Zeller.
Yeah, and I guess I want to say this too, because I guess there's people who just kind of beat the drum for Malik Monk, and that never makes any sense to me. 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy coming off the bench. I get that he can kind of plug in and spike an upside. He's a willing shooter, willing participant, but doesn't do a whole lot of things out on the floor. If you've seen his last two games in just limited minutes, obviously I expect him to get more than the 20 and the 23 played the last two, but just not a guy that I'm going to get any of on this slate.
All right, moving on to Portland at Dallas. When I put the other 8 games on the sheet, I said I can't leave this one out because this is the game I want the most players or the key players from. Definitely looking to get Luka. I don't mind Porzingis. I really would like to see Damian Lillard, and I'm pretty good with Enes Kanter as well. Not really excited about any of the other options throughout this one, unless I was to do some sort of game stack. It does have a 236 over under at the moment.
Yeah, Simon's made a lot more sense 20 minutes ago, before we got McGee, before we got Allen, before we got some of these other pieces that should add some kind of value. I'm excited to see what this boom bust tool ends up refreshing to here for me. But at the moment, I'm right there with you. I think Doncic, Lillard, Kanter are really the only 3 pieces that intrigue me at all. Obviously, Porzingis has a ceiling, 1.27 fantasy points per minute. I'm happy to get a little bit. I'm just not making him a priority, especially now that my power forward on FanDuel is kind of made up for me.
All right. And then once we get through all these games, we're just hitting the high notes. I see a lot of people are asking us some strategy questions and what to do about late swap. There are 3 10 o'clock games, so we'll talk a little bit about that. No late night hammer show tonight, but tomorrow we have 10 scheduled hours of YouTube programming.
Baby.
That is
feeling,
amazing.
Jordan?
Yeah.
How you doing?
We're going to need to clone Jordan here.
Good morning.
So fortunately, Josh takes care of his show, starting it all off at 6:30 there.
Which, by the way, if you're not watching that, you're insane, because first of all, his Excel game is wicked good.
Oh, yeah.
And that alone is like worth the price of admission. But to be able to watch the way that he correlates a lot of the data that exists around basketball he makes it tangible. He makes it easy for you to understand what can differentiate positions, why you might get to certain guys. I think his NBA Wowie game in terms of the on-off court tool, being able to like quickly analyze that stuff. For me, it would take 6 hours to be able to do what he's able to do in 20 minutes. And so I find that to be very impressive and something that if you're not watching, get on board.
All right. Question here. Playing Giles, which Bridges? I'll answer that, but let me know which Bridges. Because there are 2 tonight.
But one is definitely going to be much more popular than the other, I think.
Right.
At least I would expect so. I mean, McCall is just not even in play for me.
So tell me, do you know where does Milwaukee rank amongst defensive efficiency? They led the league each of the last 2 seasons.
It's got to be super, super low at this point in time. I mean, we're seeing totals games for them. I bet they're efficient, but they're playing at such a high pace. So I think it's probably 2 different parts. What? Jordan's like setting me up. What's happening? Oh, no.
I have no idea what he's doing, but I will say it is actually, that's not true. They are allowing 112 points per 100 possessions.
That's a lot.
The reason they are, and that's middle of the pack. Now, the reason they're looking so good they are scoring 121.2 points per 100 possessions. So they still have an 8.6 differential positive behind only the Jazz, who actually are a really good defensive team. So it's not quite the same as what it was, because the last couple of years it was like low 100s, but it's up more this year. It's just a different way of going, or of what they're doing. So I want to point that out, because we're back with Hamidou Diallo in our lives. I think he went from being a pretty good, probably building block, put him in the building blocks article, to now he's a reasonable play. Not great in my opinion, because his price is coming up, but he is the primary facilitator along with Al Horford, because we're still without Teo Maledon, no Shea, Greg Hill, and no SGA. Yeah. So we know what we're going to get from him. He's come up in price, 29 on Yahoo, 68 on FanDuel, and 71 on DraftKings. That's more than what we were seeing, but in his last 5 games, he's averaging 36.5 minutes, 16.5 points, 7.2 rebounds, 4.4 assists, and 2 combined block steals. So he's solid.
Mm-hmm. And had a usage rate sitting 23.9% last time out, 20.2 the game before that against the Lakers. Anytime you're projecting somebody for 36 minutes and they have a 1.05 fantasy point per minute rate, you're going to get some. I believe that it's going to be difficult for me not to have a little bit. Obviously, yeah, there's other intriguing options that I like. I would rather get to LaMelo Ball for a little bit more and then be cutting down on Hamidou over on FanDuel. But 6,800 is a good price point for him there. If you're trying to pair somebody, it's easier to do Lillard and Doncic with that lower price tag than jamming in a ton of LaMelo, even though that's kind of the route that I'm taking. So I have no problem there. Over on DraftKings, I don't have to make that decision. 7,100, I'm still going to get a little bit, even though that price tag seems extreme. Again, 36 minutes, 1.05 fantasy points per minute. The math just tells you that he's going to project better than 5X. So fire it up. I have no issue.
Right. The question from Giles was, can you play Kevin Porter Jr. and I'm
isn't Kevin Porter Jr. with the Rockets now?
No, because I screwed up all the names. I was stuck on the bridges.
You're thinking Michael
Porter Jr.
There
Sorry.
We go. Hey, it's okay.
Only one Porter Jr. can be healthy at any given time. That is a law now in the NBA. So
it is
one's a little mentally unhealthy. Otto Porter has broken down, so we are now left with formerly out for COVID, MPJ. So he wanted to know if he could play MPJ or Charlotte Bridges on the Charlotte version of the Bridges on his on the same lineup. I have no issues with doing that.
Yeah, I mean, they're both going to be 2 of the 3 most popular plays on the slate. I think last time that we looked at ownership, that was the case. Let me pull it up. Yeah, still the case. So Bridges and Porter Jr., yeah, that's a ton of ownership. You can find very easy paths to get different on a 9-game slate. I'm less concerned or obsessed with ownership the way that most other people might be. I find it very easy to find lower owned pivot plays that I like at different price points on this kind of a slate. That condensed ownership is fine. I have no problems eating it on either one.
All right, continuing along here, let's mention with Drew out, I kind of like Middleton. I'm ambivalent towards Antetokounmpo. They are still 11.5 point road favorites here. So the worry is, they get them there, but they only need 45 fantasy points apiece to do it before they get the fourth quarter off. That's kind of
but I mean, I would have no problem getting to whatever Middleton you got to. I'm lighter there than what I was expecting to be for a guy who's a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy on the year, 8K over on FanDuel. I was really expecting to get a ton, but it seems as though a lot of my builds are starting to punt more of small forward outside of let me pull up this. Yeah. So I'm getting up to Siakam just to make a little bit of a contrarian stance. LeBron and Kawhi, I'm lighter on. Middleton, lighter on. Ingram, I always get a lot of. So that's just something to know about me, is that I tend to value Ingram above the field almost every time out. And then Jeremy Grant at 7,600. Kind of that whole middling center of small forward in that 8K range looks so good to me. That I think it's easier for me to pivot off of Middleton, especially with how much Giannis I was getting in my last run on DraftKings.
All right. I see someone saying that Josh Richardson should be talked about more for Dallas. Actually, no, they're all healthy. And here's why. He's a fine player, but he's a complimentary piece on the team. Everybody's healthy. He's well behind the pecking order behind 2 of the most high usage players in the league in Porzingis and Doncic. and he's not their point guard. Plus now Dorian Finney-Smith's back and they're cast 1,000. So he kind of gets lost in the mix. Is it a luxury to have him on their team? Yeah, absolutely. Is he a great NBA addition? You betcha. I need 2 other guys to be out before I'm going to think about it.
He has an eclipsed 20% usage in his last 6. I'm just going to throw that out there. I want to see somebody who's like taking on some kind of an offensive role of late. Everybody's back in the mix there, even like additions of DFS, Kleba, everybody there. It's a complete log jam. So Doncic, Porzingis, or bust for Dallas for me.
Moving along here, Orlando at Phoenix. So Phoenix is getting back Abdul Nader, Dario Saric, and Cameron Payne. That just means that there are less minutes to go around for a bunch of their complementary pieces. Devin Booker's had a couple good games. Did he suddenly learn when reemerging into the lineup to play alongside Chris Paul? I don't think so. I think he's just been getting some nice shooting there. That's kind of a tenuous situation for Orlando. I guess this is the one real big set of news that we don't have. So we know that Frank Mason is out. We're still waiting on Fournier, Cole Anthony, Al-Farouq Aminu, and James Ennis. Ennis got hurt in the last game. Anthony, Fournier, and Al-Farouq Aminu all missed it. Michael Carter Williams goes from, yes, I'd like about 35% to I'm good with 5, depending on who's in or out.
Well, let me just say, so from doing the late slate show the other night, the thing that I was definitely the most wrong about, and Alex Baker, again, I always default to this guy, and this is why. Michael Carter Williams had like a 25 minutes projection over by Alex, and I was floored because that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it was kind of necessity meets previous track record we had of Michael Carter Williams coming back from injuries, I suppose. Got to 27 minutes, exceeded that. Crazy high, 36.3% usage rate, 21, 7, and 7. I don't expect that. But yeah, there are a lot of pieces here. I think this is kind of the really muddy game and the muddy situation on this slate. We've seen the Suns be pretty outrageously good and improved defensively this season with the addition of Chris Paul. He tends to do that for basketball teams, not necessarily for himself, but from a team perspective. I have a tough time trying to figure out what to do. Terence Ross, I would get an ungodly number to be over top of the field if he ended up having to do ball handling duties there, but I don't think that's going to be the case here. So I think it becomes very, very muddled down. Nikola Vucevic, that price tag has gotten all the way up to 98 and 9,900. I still think there's room to get on top of it for a 1.45 fantasy point per minute guy. I'm curious what that ownership is here right now. That's somebody that I should actually make note of because he does carry that outrageous upside there. But yeah, Michael Carter Williams kind of depreciates the value of everybody else on that team. Obviously Fournier out would be a bonus. Obviously Cole Anthony and Ennis out would be a bonus for some of those guys, but now they're just better options that are going to contain more usage and more opportunity at other spots on this slate. And I don't think that this is the need where I need to like pivot myself into a bunch of magic to get different.
Yeah, and that one was kind of an interesting one. I didn't know what to expect for Michael Carter Williams because he had been out for, he had missed a full 5 weeks. The last game he had played was January 4th. Mm-hmm. And even before he was out, he was really only playing 20, 25 minutes, sort of depending on who they had healthy.
I'm just going to say there's a reason Alex Baker is Alex Baker. And that projection alone was just like staggering to me when I saw that, and I was trying to account for it. And I got to a little bit, but I didn't have nearly as much as what I should have based on that news. Just default to the guy.
Well, the 16 shot attempts that he took was the most in
a while.
Scrolling back.
Probably
that might have been a career high. Well, we'd have to go back to his Philly Rookie of the Year triple-double.
I can do that for you right now.
His last game was February 3rd, 2017. He had 18 field goal attempts in an overtime game.
That's what I just got. Man, he had dude. Yeah, unbelievable.
So we're not expecting that again, but he is a reasonable play if a lot of those guys are out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Please do hit that like button. No money time, but if we get to, I don't know, there are almost 3,000 people watching. We're at 470 likes. Let's get up to 750. That's all. 1 in 10 of you just has to hit that like button. We'll give away some ownership plays. I see that every time I hit refresh, the boom bust tool refreshes. So I haven't bothered to put it into Fantasy Cruncher yet. So I will be doing that next.
Yeah, I don't have a single lineup made yet, so I want to let that be known. That's just where we're at today. Happy Valentine's, everyone.
It is what. Oh yes, happy Valentine's Day. Moving along here. Here's the game I like: Memphis at Sacramento. So we still don't know Bagley and Fox's status. You can roll with the Aaron Fox as kind of a, hey, if he doesn't play, you have the built-in swap to Halliburton, and then you can utilize the excess salary on another player upgrade. So I don't mind putting him in lineups now. Bagley, I kind of don't think he's going to play. On the other side here, I think with Jonas Valanciunas, you have an incredible option because he's going to be going against nobody that can stop him. Bagley on one wheel, no. Rashawn Holmes, no. The dusted off Nemanja Bjelica, no. I'm missing somebody, but it doesn't matter. So, because we got a $10 super chat from Timothy Tayon, I'm assuming. He is asking for building blocks. So for me, Luka, Dame, and Jonas Valanciunas are three on my short list. By the way, those were all three in the building blocks article. You got to write this article well if you want that stuff to have shelf life throughout the day. Now, we have a bunch of value pieces that we fit around them, but all this news didn't make those guys worse plays. So that would kind of be my key three building block plays. What do you like? And we'll talk, don't worry, we're going to talk about Porter Jr. here in a second, gamers. What would your three building blocks be?
I'm right there with you. I think Jonas Valanciunas stands above and away my favorite player from the Memphis side. Love that price point. Love the amount of production that you've seen out of him. And I would say out of anything is just like the amount of minutes we've seen: 24, 33, 29, and 32 in the last four. We've seen him eclipse 20 in 3 of his last 4 since coming back from injury. The usage rate has been over 20% every single time out. The assist rate has even been there a little bit, 2, 3, 3, and 5. So there's a little bit of output there. And we haven't even seen a block upside or a steal upside from him, which can randomly spike in spots too. So I'm happy to get to as much Jonas Valanciunas, especially over on DraftKings, where you can play 2 centers. You can pair him with Allen, you can pair him with McGee, whatever kind of route you're taking there. 7,400 is a nice number. And over on FanDuel, it's even better, 7,100. But I expect him to be very, very popular there. Looking around the rest of that team, I have a tough time getting to Kyle Anderson being even semi-popular. 1.07 fantasy point per minute guy on the year, 5,900. I would rather get up a little bit for more certainty. I expect that stuff to start coming down a little bit. We've seen a crazy amount of just spiked shooting upsides from him of late. He's been super efficient there. If that regresses a little bit, that tag doesn't look nearly as appealing. Ja Morant has to pop eventually. It's just got to happen. We know the kind of player that he is. He's got enough of a track record there. 1.23 fantasy point per minute guy over on FanDuel for the year still. And we haven't seen an upside there. 7,600, not nearly as exciting when you have Luka, when you have Lillard, when you have those guys on this slate who, again, I totally agree being great building blocks of this slate now that we have especially good value. But Ja Morant is somebody I'm willing to get over the field on too, especially on FanDuel.
All right. It could be money time if we get a few more likes.
Oh, dear God.
Just going to leave it at that. Sorry. Them's the rules.
I didn't wear a backwards hat. I'm not doing the Spags. Maybe there's something to that. Spags has me conditioned to wear a back. Oh, EMac, let's go. You had that in the pocket. You were ready. What is happening? Flip it around. Cha-ching. Flip it around.
Cha-ching. I got a couple of them. Wait. World Series champion, Washington.
Good Lord, keep it there. What are you doing?
All right.
My God.
Talk me into or out of Tyus Jones, and this is actually talking me out of.
Oh, okay. So you're super high on Tyus Jones, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of good plays coming along. I like the high-paced game. I like the fact that they're missing their 2.
Have you seen his bust percentage by any chance over on Awesemo.com?
He's 4,400 and 4,500 on FanDuel.
55.3% bust percentage, 5.7% boom percentage. Does that change anything for you? I'm getting 0%, which is why I want to hear why you like Tyus Jones.
Wow. Well, first thing in the morning when I didn't have all of this other news, he was kind of coming up in my mind.
I think that's kind of what he is. He might be somebody that if you were looking for value early on, he could kind of be a piece you could plug. Late slate, late slate, get your exposure, fire up Tyus Jones and have a blast. But even then, we just aren't going to see much of an upside there. I know I know that there's like going to be opportunity for him to be back in this rotation with the absence of so many dudes there. But now Grayson Allen's also back, immediately playing minutes, immediately getting kind of his role back. 35 minutes in the last game, 21.6% usage. I'm not getting much Tyus Jones at all. He's kind of a casualty of the other value on this slate.
Ouch! I'm now Spag's grandfather.
I know, and I like.
No,
Tyus
I'm more offended by being Spag's grandfather. That hurts.
Oh,
being Josh's dad for Terry, that's horrible. Now this is brutal. All right, let's do money time. Since we did get there, I just hit refresh. Oh, the boom bust updated again. These are 2 minutes old on our percentages. DraftKings. Miles Bridges, 36, Jared Vanderbilt, 27, Jeremy Grant, 22, Luka Doncic, 22, Michael Porter Jr., 20, Damian Lillard, 20, Darius Garland, 20. FanDuel, we have LaMelo Ball, 44, Devontae Graham, 35, Miles Bridges, 32, DeMar DeRozan, 27, Michael Porter, 27, Jeremy Grant, 26. And then Yahoo, I think we might be the only site that does Yahoo ownership projections for what it's
beautiful.
Worth. Jared Allen, 45. He is just $20 there. Miles Bridges, 43. He is just 16. Josh Jackson.
That's crazy.
Is 32%. He is $15. LaMelo Ball is 31. DeMar DeRozan, 26. Terry Rozier, 26. And his Cantor, 23. You can play 2 centers there. There we go. Look at that. Bonus money time. Hey, give us a few more likes here, and I'll drop in some more head-to-heads for free over there on DK. Last night, I went 4-9, but one of my victories was over Jordan Klein.
All that matters. Oh, hang on. I'm pulling him. Shame.
So, yes, that happened.
Game of Thrones? Anyone? No. Good times. Good Lord. He is so red. My God, you are a Valentine Day card. I brought the pink. I brought the pink game for the people.
I'm wearing red. One of my few red. It's Mickey Mouse. It's the only red shirt I had.
Oh, my God. You must have made a Mickey Mouse lineup, Jordan, to lose to EMac there. What's that like? Little boy? Come on. Come to the grown man table over here with EMac. Let's go.
That is so funny.
It's all right, dude. I'm the one who gets just drilled on these shows, so I'm happy to dish it back a little bit. If there's somebody who can dish it back, I got to be able to I got to get that out of my system a little bit. It might come across a little aggressive at times. My apologies, but you were loved.
Right.
Let's get back to it.
Yeah, here's how you find the head-to-heads. Go to the DK lobby, search for the username EMac. There are 10 of them there. Have fun.
Print money.
Yeah. It's I either come close to sweeping them or getting swept.
Jeremy Grant will not be in that lineup, is what we've learned. We have Jeremy Grant.
Yeah. So SuperDraft, again, 2,000 short right now on their marquee contest, 3,000 short on their $4 entry contest, 4,000 short on their $1 contest. Guys and gals, getting that overlay is better than any information that we can tell you. Yes, you still have to monetize things over there and actually have the results, but it is going to be that much easier when you're not going against the rest of the field. Quickly call up some SuperDraft plays here. We'll talk about that next, but let's continue on through our games. Mm-hmm. Cleveland at the Clippers. Drummond out, Paul George out. Clippers favored by 11.5. What do you want to do? Jared Allen, sure, why not? Maybe some of the Sexland backcourt. Kawhi, probably. But these guys all seem to be like marginal plays, meaning they're right on the cut line. If they're in my lineups, I'm not sad. If they're not in my lineups, I'm not sad. But we do have a robust late slate, so we must talk about them. There's a 3-game late slate.
Yeah, no, the late slate sets up as a pretty good spot to be making some pivots to what you're doing in your main slate. We talk a little bit about that, where you can find like Tyus Jones is far more intriguing if you're going to play him on a late slate, where I think his build and where his salary's at could actually fit into an optimal build. I don't really see that being the case on the main slate, where there's just so many guys above and below him that I think are just going to out-project him. So tough guy to get to there. But talking about Cleveland specifically, now we've got some decisions to make, because on DraftKings, you've got JaVale McGee 3,100 and Jared Allen 6,500. I'm going to get way more Jared Allen. I think we've seen a couple of times where McGee necessarily hasn't seen the run that we've been expecting into in some of these spots, but part of that can also be that he's played poorly in a couple of these games where Drummond hasn't been on the floor. And if he was playing better, we would see that extended run to like 24 minutes to 22 minutes. What is his minutes projection right now with Alex? That's kind of what I'm curious of, because that's really what it comes down to. If McGee gets the minutes, he's going to project phenomenally well at 3,100. I just have a tough time guaranteeing him to get 20 plus in this spot regardless. I think if he backs up Allen directly, you're looking at 30 plus or like Allen's just the significantly better play for me and somebody that I want more exposure to.
I'm refreshing it right now. It was 16. I want to see what it is, but it's taking a moment. Oh, no, it is 16.
Yeah, it's taking a little bit for me too. And I've finally gotten this internet thing figured out a little bit where it's going nice and smooth for me so far, knock on wood. But looking forward to seeing, here we go. Now it's coming. McGee is
Allen's at 31, McGee's at 16. So
yeah, and that's tough for me. It's tough to get even 15%. I expect that number to be higher. I think 3,100 people are going to start jamming him in. I want to make sure to get way on top of Allen. I just think the upside, we saw it the first time out of the gate with Drummond out, just how ridiculous that game was. And it could have been even better. Kind of got carried away towards the end, if I recall. But man, I'm going to have a tough time not getting to a ton of them in here too. Somebody that should also get a little bit of love over on DraftKings that I'm not really seeing right now. And we've seen him spike some random shooting upsides. I know Taurean Prince is now in the mix here too. So fine. Not going to project out well. But Chetty Osman, 3,300, makes like a super sneaky contrarian play over at small forward. I kind of want to get to a little bit there as well. Not necessarily 3,800 over on FanDuel. I have enough other FanDuel small forward plays that I like, but 3,300 could be something really off the beaten path to spike a shooting upside.
Oh, I never get him right. I've written him up as
we never do. That's the
bust
fun
of
part
the
about
day
playing
twice
Chetty.
this year. His two best games were on those 2 days.
But now there's a path. I mean, I don't project him for that many minutes, but if he goes out and plays well, 0.85 guy who has broken slates at higher price tags than this. So 3,300. I don't like it. I don't love it, but I'm going to have a little bit of it.
You want some more of it.
Yeah, and there it was. See, I rhymed and brought it back. It was nice.
All right. Let's see. For those of you that are making NHL lineups right now, like me, just know that Cale Makar is out for, I was going to say the Rockies, out for the Avalanche.
There are two people playing NHL in
Me
this
and
Slack
you?
currently. Me and you. That is it. We're the only two finishing up NHL and NBA lineups while giving people analysis. Probably something we should look into. There's support groups out there for such things.
I believe so, but I've got all my stuff set up, so I just literally am hitting the cruncher button. So
okay, honestly, that's half the battle. So if you got that done already, it makes it pretty easy. Let's see.
All right, final game of the night, MPJ. So what do we do here? He's going to be incredibly popular.
Yep.
We're not going to worry about him fouling out. Why? Because he really can't play defense. It's not a good matchup for him, both defensively and offensively, going against either Drummond or not Drummond, Anthony Davis, or LeBron James. Although at this point in the cash lineups, I think you need to put him in there for the block because he's so popular. But I think he's going to be I think for tournaments, he's a bust tonight.
Wow.
Yeah, I might be sad during the 10 o'clock games.
Okay. Well, by
busting, I don't think maybe we get like 25 fantasy points and he's run off the court.
I really like him. So
okay, so give us. There was the glass half empty. There was glass lying on the floor, broken.
So I understand. I understand apprehension of Michael Porter Jr., but Barton, there is projecting
no Barton,
Michael Porter,
no Harris, no PJ
I'm
Dozier.
saying there is no resistance, and generally there would be plenty of resistance. Now we've seen of recently RJ Hampton re-enter this rotation, so there's a possibility for sitting what's he played the last four 27, 16, 19, and 19 minutes the last four for RJ Hampton. That could decrease a little bit of the projection off the top. Monty Morris is fine and whatever else, but Michael Porter Jr. playing 34 minutes, being over a 1 point per minute guy, I find it very difficult at 5,800 on FanDuel not to have a ton. And then on DraftKings 5,900, he fits in really well in terms of the projection you're going to have on this slate. Like, I find it difficult not to have a ton of him under 6K. It's just so hard for him to, I believe, fail in this spot. Pretty much the exact opposite of what you said there. I find it difficult when, unless you were to go out and just be completely benign defensively, like be the most atrocious version of Michael Porter Jr. defensively, and they just get frustrated and pull him off the court. There's no way that he doesn't see 32, 34 minutes unless this game blows out, which wouldn't expect it to. I would expect it to be close, especially if Anthony Davis is out. And yeah, I want a ton of Michael Porter Jr.
All right. The boom bust just readjusted itself.
Yeah. So 37.3% boom percentage, Michael Porter Jr., 22.4 bust. Now that's not going to be a great leverage score. He's only in the optimal, I guess, 22.7% of the time over on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, you're looking at, he's basically appropriately on there, 20% on each of those. But for me, part of it is like, there are so few plays in that price range in the 5Ks that have that much upside that exist. And that's why he's owned the way that he is. For me, that makes it an easy decision to just go over top of the field. Like that's something that just kind of sticks out to me. When you see somebody who has that high of a boom percentage, I want to get over top of it because there aren't many people in the price range on any given day that are going to have something better than that.
All right, that gets us through all of our games. What do you want to do with regards to late swap? And leaving ourselves free, because we have a lot of we have potential news that the field most likely won't be reacting for because there are plenty of other options today. So we have a mess in Orlando, and we have De'Aaron Fox and Anthony Davis, I guess, are the other two. So how do you want to attempt to do this? Would you create any lineups that play nobody for the first hour and then leave yourself some room to just build from the last 5 games? I'm somebody who tries to preach late swap every single time, where you should give yourself as many outs to viable pivots later on. The problem with this Magic situation is that it's going to be a slower game. It's a more difficult defensive matchup. One guy is eating up so much of the production on any given slate. Michael Carter Williams is now 4,700 over on DraftKings, 4,400 on FanDuel. Cole Anthony, if you were to get ruled in, there's not a lot of guys like on that cheaper end of the price range. I don't want to have to pivot to like Monty Morris or somebody down there in the 4Ks. I would have to make sure that I had direct pivots at another position, had open spots. Like, there could be some value. Jones, maybe?
God, no, give it up. No, Tyus Jones is not a thing today. He was a thing back in Appleton, Minnesota, I believe is where he was at. Or no, that's Appleton, Wisconsin. It was Apple something in Minnesota, where he played his high school ball. Apple Valley or something. I can't recall. But he was
deep cut. Now I get to say deep cut to you.
Go ahead. Deep cut. Just letting it be known. Well, I grew up in South Dakota, and Tyus Jones was a thing in his high school day. He was a stud. Team you didn't want to play in high school, him and his brother. But Tyus Jones at Duke was decent. Him in Minnesota was decent. But I just don't know how you could be excited to get to him on this slate.
Big question. What is making Jared Vanderbilt such a good play?
So part of it is his fantasy point per minute rate. Let me pull him up here. He is 1.05 fantasy point per minute guy. He's now in the starting lineup, which I think probably bolsters his minutes projection a little bit. I'm curious. I haven't looked at it. Let me refresh and get everything situated here. But generally a high fantasy point per minute guy. When he gets the minutes, he generally performs as well. That price tag is now dropped all the way down. So I understand it. 4K on FanDuel makes for a decent spot, but 3,500 on DraftKings is really like the bottom. Like his popularity has gone up purely because in that starting role, you would expect him to see more minutes going forward.
How do you feel about JaMychal Green?
Not great. I'm not getting to any right now. So I would be curious. I could imagine at 4,200 on DK or 4,400 on FanDuel getting a little bit.
Yeah, he's 14% on DK.
Yeah, I'm way under that. I don't think I have a single share.
Right. Just seeing what some of our other questions coming through here are. Rancho Cucamonga.
Whoa.
Nice. I don't know what that means, but there we go.
California.
Green Bay in the house. Vanderbilt. All right. EMac, you're shooting whiskey more, bring out the stud play? No, I don't like whiskey.
I do.
Margaritas.
I'll take the whiskey.
Yeah, margaritas, vodka Collins, or vodka tonic and beer. That's it. No wine, no anything else. Nothing with soda. And I've stopped drinking soda. I'm down to a can a day, if that. It's very sad.
Somebody just said Lakers bench guys in the Slack. Why would you want to do that to yourself? Anthony Davis, I would say if you're going to make me pick one side or the other, I think Anthony Davis plays. He played the other game. He played all the way up to 35 minutes. He's had a day off. I would expect him to go in this spot if I had to pick one way or the other.
Sadiq Bey. What is a realistic output for Sadiq Bey tonight? 25 fantasy points?
So one thing I also like to always hammer home is that sometimes people believe to know something about rookies that they don't actually know, because there's always room for them to see more minutes and more output randomly as they get more comfortable in the offense, as they get more run. They also are mainly blowout proof because they'll play minutes regardless of the game, unless they're like a featured team where they want the guy to be healthy. But we really don't even have that this season. Maybe Wiseman would have been a guy on Golden State, but they haven't played like outrageously good outside of Steph. Sadiq Bey is now starting to see some of those extended minutes and that extended usage. We've seen the usage 20 and 22.5 the last two, played all the way up to 27 minutes the last game, but he shot the ball just outrageously well. 7 for 7 from 3. Like, come on, don't try to like chase right on the back end, because now you're chasing at an increased price point. You're chasing him up to 4,400 and 4,500 over on FanDuel. Those are the times to hit eject. Like, just get yourself off of biting, like trying to buy back in on that. And that's generally somebody that I would want to have a lot of, because he is a rookie who could generally see more of that run. I was getting a lot of him early, and I've just kind of like carved it back down, or as Josh Engelman would say, nerfed it.
How do you feel about Jordan McLaughlin?
Not great. Backup point guard. I just don't think you need to go there on this slate. There's way better spots, way better value.
All right, I'm looking here for anybody that we've got. Do you think that Dennis Smith Jr. plays more than 12 minutes? He's played 16 and 13 in his due.
Wright's been playing really, really good. I was getting to a little bit of him on both sites. 13, 16, 4 minutes. Yeah, no, I wouldn't expect him to get outside of 15. No.
How do you feel about Connaughton? FanDuel.
So he's been a popular on FanDuel.
Yes.
No, that's going to change the question, because I think on DK you would make sense if you were trying to get there. He's been a pretty popular piece, but he's up to 3,800 he's up to 3,800 on FanDuel, 3,400 over on DraftKings. I would have no real interest getting to a 3,800 shooting guard with some of these other guys that I'm going to be heavier on. There's not really. I mean, I would rather take shots on just about anybody. It's not too hard to be able to play those mid 5K shooting guards on this slate, and they carry way more upside than Connaughton.
If you had a cash center on FanDuel in mind, who would that be?
Jonas Valanciunas.
Okay. Why am I playing JaVale McGee? You know what? Because I am. There's my Fred VanVleet lineup right there.
There you go. Well, 3,100. It's hard to disagree with him being a viable punt. If he gets minutes, you're golden. If he doesn't, you are dead. So that's always fun. I think it just depends if he plays well or not.
Mr. Moneybags would like to know Melo Ball and Roby or Lowry and Bridges DK single entry.
Lowry and Bridges.
We have 7 minutes to go here. Oh boy, Ellington and Bay. No, don't play Wayne Ellington.
Don't play either of them.
Is this a Siakam night tonight?
I am hoping so. I would very much hope so.
Who is your, at this point, most owned player?
On DraftKings, let me pull that up. It's Luka Doncic.
How many percent?
Way, 62% on Luka Doncic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I have 62%, and over on FanDuel, it's going to be something pretty close. So let me click crunch here.
The real question is, why don't I like him very much? I only have him at 35. Well, I may have to go a little bit higher. That's a good
I have a little bit less. I mean, I think he's going to be the highest score on the slate. I think he's taking over even more. I think he's kind of asserting himself from, with everybody here back. He now has guys who can knock down shots around him a little bit more frequently too. It's opening up a little bit more of the floor for him. Sometimes when you introduce other guys to a lineup, you would generally take down their projection because Josh Richardson, but his usage hasn't been up at all. And he's somebody capable of knocking down shots. So I think that this has been a good thing for Luka Doncic to have other options on a court that could actually do something. You're going to see that assist rate go up. I'm just bullish on Luka Doncic every single slate.
So what are they? They lost 6 straight, and now they've won 6 of 8. So
yeah, because they got some dudes back who can knock down shots. They don't have to give minutes to some randos that are incapable of opening up the floor. Just complete randos.
All right, let's see. This is where it's good that I already had my stuff set up.
FanDuel LaMelo Ball is my highest own. I just want to let it be.
Ooh, okay. What
52%? 52%.
Okay. So
I'm more spread out over on FanDuel. Today I'm playing fewer lineups over there than I am on DK. But I've got him and then Allen as well. I've got a bunch of Jared Allen.
So when you're going over the field, I mean, you really go over the field.
Yeah, I play aggressively. I would say I probably play a little bit more aggressively. I am happy to inherit risk, but there's certain spots. I especially think on the night that Luka goes for 70 or 80, if you're triple the field or quadruple the field on that, you are removing yourself in those lineups, regardless of how the other plays go. You're removing them so far ahead of the field for anybody who doesn't have him.
Do you have any Keldon Johnson thoughts?
Yeah, on FanDuel, I was getting to a little bit. I'm getting less now because I don't need to go as high up. Now that there's enough value, at power forward, I'm punting a lot more. Shooting guard, I'm getting in that mid 4.5s range. So I don't have to get nearly as different as what I was before. So I get it. I like him. I expected him to start playing better with Aldridge out. And we've seen that in some spots. I'm just going to be lighter on today because I can't play everybody.
I am playing Grayson Allen in that Fred Van Elite fan club.
Let's go.
I see that I am going against one Jordan Klein in my head-to-head here. How are you on your uploads?
I'm close. Okay. So you got to give me 1 minute.
Yeah,
give me a 1 minute.
No worries. We got this because I'm just making sure that Fred Van Elite lineup's in, and if I don't get the others in, I'll survive. So no worries there. Let's see. Oh, one thing I did want to mention is the deep dive article is free. Terry McBride writes it on Sundays. He probably put 5,000 words into today's article. I think he literally was writing it for 7 hours. I'm not even joking. He released it in installments, in waves, because it was taking him a long time. Use that for the late slate. There's 3 games on there for the late slate. You definitely want to check that out. Looking over there at SuperDraft. Oh boy, let me hit refresh. Their contests are only half full. This locks in 4 minutes. They have 1,700 out of 3,900 in their $15 contest. They have 1,900 out of 4,300 in their $4 contest. You guys definitely want to jump on over there. We do have projections for them. That is something that is very, very helpful because they have a unique scoring system with their multipliers. The top plays tonight are Jokic, Antetokounmpo, Lillard, Vooch, Middleton, Enes Kanter, Anthony Davis, Michael Porter, Jarrett Allen. Those guys Jarrett Allen has a 55% booster on top of whatever he scores. That's very, very helpful. You've got Amadou Diallo at 45%. So definitely give them some consideration. All right, let's run some more. Let's not lock in Fred VanVleet. How do you feel about Ja Morant this evening?
Like him very much. I expect a ceiling to show up eventually here. Be early to the party on Ja Morant. Do not be late. Because that price tag will be 8,500 before you know it, and you'll be like, crap.
Is it? Oh, I now have 100% Luka in my lineups.
Oh, well, that's more than me.
That is.
Yeah, 62% is the final number.
It's going to come down to 60%.
Oh, shoot. Hang on. I had Simon
out
of my pool, and then he snuck back in when I refreshed.
No worries on this one. So I'm going to do my upload. Now, here's something interesting. So I want a lot more flexibility. I already know I have my placeholder lineups. Oops. And I forgot to do my cash lineup because I was busy talking. So I am loading those with nobody in this early game. But I am of these contests of these lineups I just crunched. I did 100 of them, and I am signed up for 300 contests today. So I'm going to run 200 of these. And then I'm going to circle back with my other third and take more time to build these.
I want to also let it be known, just for the sake of letting people know, I'm getting way more Torian Prince than I thought I was going to. 4,500 run DraftKings. He's just kind of sneaking into way more lineups, and I didn't even bring him up. I think I've like glanced over him, and he's getting in like 22% of my lineups there. So I just want to let it be known that that's somebody else to be considering on this slate.
Thoughts on Nemanja Bjelica? Let me tell you, he hasn't played. He didn't play for a whole month.
No thanks.
He may play. He may play if Bagley is out.
I thought he was kind of an interesting contrarian thing on the last slate with so many injuries there. Like they aren't showing any ability to like let Whiteside go out there for 24 minutes. So like he's gonna play 20-ish minutes, but like don't expect big things out of him. That's just a ownership play.
Do we expect Brandon Clark to play? He's questionable. I think it's an ankle or a tweaked knee. I forget which. He has said true game time decision. I don't think he does. That's just
nope.
All right.
That's pretty much it, I think.
Oh, here we go. Not a super chat, but I will read this one aloud since it is Valentine's Day. I made my wife flat iron steak and scallops with spinach and baked potatoes. What are the odds that I cash tonight? I cleaned that up for the rest of the family.
Hundo, baby. Hundo. Just was it? Hang on. Was that like? Oh yeah, no, dude, you're getting it in good. You're getting it in good, son. You can't. I would say the exposure that you have to the high end outcome is looking mighty fine. The scallops, especially. Oh, invite me over next time.
Maybe some nice ice cream that's been warmed by sitting on the counter over some microwaved brownies that you bought from the store, a good bakery. If you
Trader Joe's. So well, yeah.
There we are. We're doing this all again tomorrow, 6:30 a.m. The Process with Josh Engelman, 10 a.m. NBA Strategy Show, Adam Kaufman and Nerd Ask Greg, 2 o'clock PGA First Look, Jason Roslin, Jeff Ulrich, 3 o'clock NHL Strategy Show with Jake and Terry, 3 o'clock also Premium Show, Game Plan, Alex behind the paywall. I want to point out I've been getting a ton of questions about Fantasy Cruncher. Watch these game plan shows. The one Terry did yesterday, he spent the whole time talking about Fantasy Cruncher. You can ask questions from Alex and Steve and Sean's on and whoever else is doing these, and they will answer your questions. It's a little easier for them to do it and show you on the screen what they're doing than to do it via Slack and other methodologies. If you search Awesemo and Fantasy Cruncher on YouTube, you'll also find a bunch of our videos. Those are also helpful as well. 4 o'clock, the tip-off, Nerd Ask Greg, and Eric Linquist. Then we got 5 o'clock, Deeper Dive with Lofty and Adam. 6 o'clock, Spags and Josh, live before lock. The NBA Late Night Hammer, Spags and you. And that wraps it up for the day. Oh, the Slate Starter podcast. How can I forget? We actually have over 10 hours of audio/video content tomorrow.
And we're done over here. Yeah, no, our NBA product. I'm just so impressed by everybody else in this new process videos, the game plan videos. This the amount of data that we have to mine through. I mean, you will not be bored tomorrow. Enjoy your President's Day.
It's going to be a good one. Oh, that's right. Do we have any?
Some people aren't working.
There's early hockey, I think. Is there early basketball?
I will not be grinding that one. I can tell you that right now.
No basketball at 7 o'clock with the 7-game slate. And there may only be one early hockey game. Let's see. They only had 2 games today. A couple of teams are being postponed for COVID protocol. Tomorrow, 1 4 o'clock game. And then they have a rousing 10-game main slate, or maybe 9-game. So there we go. All right.
Let's do it.
That was a lot of fun. Hat tip to Jordan Klein, who has produced literally every show this weekend, because Tyler was moving. So it was all Jordan all the time. Thank you very much. We can follow Jordan at Jordan Klein on Twitter.
Sounds about right.
Yes,
Jordan G. Klein.
Jordan D. Klein, as in declined. As in, ladies, he's declining you. He's got a girlfriend.
Oh my God,
is over there.
Please end
Eric
this stream.
Linquist, and I am at EMac DFS. With that, gamers, good luck.